Hello, my name is Alvy Byran, and for this tutorial video exercise, I have decided to choose a topic which is diffusion theory. This falls under theories of persuasion and social influence. As diffusion theory also falls under PR, when it comes to public relations, it is basically the sense of various people that are trying to persuade a certain type of audience to learn new information, to change emotions, and to act in certain ways based on the product or idea that they are trying to sell. There are several factors that influence how persuasive messages or actions will be. As said by certain scholars, persuasion is also using communication in an attempt to change, shape, or reinforce perceptions, feelings, thinkings, and behavior. When it comes to persuasion, there are four terms that are mainly talked about, which would be awareness, which is accepting the information for the first time, attitude, to like or dislike the idea, beliefs, which is assessing things surrounding the idea or product, which is true or false, and lastly would be behavior. Examples of factors that influence would be source of the message itself, and the receiver. Researchers have found that the more credible or believable the source is, the more likely we will accept the message. Studies of effective messages consider such as characteristics as language intensity, message sightness, and the quality and quantity of the evidence. Gender and personality traits the receiver will also influence the impact of persuasive messages. Diffusion theory is a theory that goes on to look at how a person or a group of people processes and accepts an information. Diffusion theory mainly suggests that the only way a person goes through to adopt or accepting a product or a new idea, they would have to go through these 5 stages. These 5 stages are awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, and adoption. When it comes to awareness, the individual has to be exposed to the idea. Interest, the idea has to arouse the individual. Evaluation, the individual must consider the idea as potentially useful. Trial is when the person tries out the idea or the innovation with others or by themselves. Adoption represents the final acceptance of the idea after having successfully passed through the 4 earlier stages. When it comes to diffusion theory, it's not simply an act of impulse, but it is seen as a useful theory that explains how people reach a very important decision. Mass media are often responsible for individuals moving through the first two steps, which is awareness and interest. The personal influence that are caused by friends or family members is more likely to move the person towards the 3rd and 4th stage, which is evaluation and trial. Not only until a person feels satisfied with the product or idea, until he can ensure to reach the final step, which is the 5th step called adoption. This itself leads on to diffusion innovation theory, which was first founded by Everett Rogers during the 1980s, who mentioned that the process by which an innovation is communicated over time among the participants in a social system. It is said by Everett Rogers that there are 5 main characteristics of an idea, product, or innovation that have consistently influenced adopters. Those 5 main characteristics would be relative advantage, compatibility, complexity, observability, and trialability. When he mentions about relative advantage, it is the degree to which an idea is perceived to be an enhancement of the current offerings. Compatibility refers to the extent to which an innovation or an idea is perceived to fit together with the potential adopters' habits or day-to-day practices. When it comes to complexity, it refers to the degree to which an innovation is perceived as being complicated to use. Observability is the degree to which the results of an innovation are observable to others, other than yourself. Triability refers to the degree to which an innovation or idea may be sufficiently tested prior to the adoption. As there are people that goes through the stages of diffusion theory, the final stage, which is the adoption process itself has its own final stages, has its own final 5 stages. Those 5 stages are knowledge, persuasion, decision, implementation, and confirmation. When it comes to knowledge, the individual is first exposed to an innovation or idea, but lacks information about it. During this stage, the person or individual has not yet been inspired to find out more of the information on the idea or innovation itself. Persuasion, the second step, which is persuasion, The individual is interested in the innovation and actively seeks related information or details about the product or idea. Decision, the individual takes the concept of the change and weighs the advantages and disadvantages of using the innovation or idea, and decides whether to adopt or reject it at the end. Due to certain people's individualistic nature of this stage, it is seen as the most difficult stage to which they have to finalize their decision. When it comes to implementation, which is the fourth stage, the individual employs the innovation to a varying degree depending on the situation. During this stage, the individual also determines the usefulness of innovation and may search even further information on it. Confirmation, which is the final stage and the fifth stage, the individual finalizes his or her decision to continue using the innovation. This stage is both interpersonal and interpersonal. Lastly, the people who are to be involved in making decisions or with the diffusion theory itself are either called adopter categories or opinion leaders. Opinion leaders are seen as the most influential when it comes to spreading either positive or negative information about the innovation or the idea. There are 5 different types of opinion leaders: innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. Innovators are people who are willing to take the risk and who mainly have a social status with quite amount of money on them. They are also seen as very social and would have close contacts to the people that are mainly trying to promote that idea, and they will consistently have interactions with them. Their risk tolerance allows them to adopt technologies or ideas that may ultimately fail. Financial resources is what helps them absorb any sort of failure that would happen in the future. Early adopters are individuals who have the highest degree of opinion leadership among these categories. Early adopters have a higher social status, financial liquidity, advanced education, and more socially forward than late adopters. They are more discreet in adoption choices than innovator. They use judicious choice of adoption to help them maintain a central communication position. Early majorities are people who adopt an innovation after a varying degree of time that is significantly longer than the innovators and early adopters. Early majority have above average social status, have somewhat average contact with early adopters, and seldom hold positions of opinion leadership in a system. The fourth type of person would be late majority, which are people that adopt an innovation after a certain average of participants. These individuals approach of an innovation with a high degree of skepticism after the majority of society has adopted the innovation itself or idea. Late majorities are typically skeptical about an innovation, have usually below average social status, not as much financial liquidity as early majorities and previous people, and is in contact with others in late majorities and early majorities, and is part of a very little opinion leadership. Laggards, which is the last group of people in opinion leaders, they are the type of people to adopt an innovation last. Unlike some of the previous opinion leaders, individuals in these categories show little to no opinion leadership. These individuals typically have an aversion to the change agents. Laggards typically tend to be focused on old traditions compared to the modern traditions. Basically, they follow the old ways rather than the new ways. They will also have lowest social status, lowest financial liquidity compared to the rest, and oldest among adopters, and is mainly in contact with only family and close friends, as they feel that other sources might be as untrusted. Okay, that's me. Thank you for listening.